Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr. Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast.
Chapter 19, Love It Away.
Hey, look at us down here, making all this fuss. We know better than that. Only ignorance shall destroy us. Some are out of control. Most of us are wanderers. Which way will we go? Which way we go? Love it away. Love it away. Love it away. Love it away. Listen to your heart when you are lonely. Listen to the quiet voice inside you. Hey, listen to your heart when you are lonely, telling you which way to go. Should I turn right? Should I turn left? All the answers inside you. Should I turn right? Should I turn left? You've all the answers inside. Love it away. Love it away. Love it away. Love, love, love it away. Love it away. Oh, listen to the lump in your throat, tell you something it wants to say. I know it hurts, doesn't have to. Listen to your heart. Love it away. Love it away. Listen to your heart.
Once I knew the truth about my biological father, I entered this incredible stage of transformation. Stillness was the answer. I became completely aware of my breath. I totally surrendered and spirit took over. My ego vanished. The real healing began. But I was only scratching the surface because we all have our levels of tolerance for pain, and releasing pain takes a tremendous amount of energy, willpower, resilience, and awareness. This process began in this moment, but has figuratively and literally taken me 2 decades to have the clarity that I have now. So many dysfunctional thought patterns surfaced through the experiences that I had with my new extended Hawaiian family. The wisdom I have is that a life is a life of learning from the beginning to the end. The end is never ending if one believes you go on to another life. The enlightened ones achieve the knowledge to the point of near perfection, and then you're done. How many lifetimes does that take? It could be thousands if you have that awareness. I do. At this stage, my commitment lasted about a month until I grew strong enough physically, and I felt that my mental attitude was healthy enough to become part of the community. The first lesson I learned about telling the truth was catching myself every time I would exaggerate, because, exaggeration is a form of lying. I discovered that the temperature in my body would tell me like a barometer if I was bending the truth or if I could just be blatantly honest. I began choosing the latter because all of my new chosen Hawaiian family preferred the raw truth over any storytelling that wasn't real. Storytelling in Hawaii is a prime example of people taking the time to listen to one another. This is exactly the environment that I needed to be in. Coming from parents who withheld the truth from me, now with this new information about my biological father, I craved the truth. My parents made their choices based on the ethic of protecting me, but what they didn't realize is that they were doing quite the opposite. Once again, you cannot build on a lie. I was definitely caught in a trap for all those years until I had something that would allow me to put the brakes on and reprogram myself. Adjusting my own thoughts to speaking honestly was similar to breaking a very toxic addiction. Once I tapped into the truth, I realized that I had it in me when I married my first husband, who was a brutally honest person. My instinct was to choose a person of high integrity, but my problem was that I couldn't access that information enough to fully wake up and become a completely changed person. Subsequently, 30 years down the road, I met Jared, who doesn't know how to be anything but honest. My instincts were guiding me toward a path of virtue rather than deceit. I also believe that you attract like-minded people, and with this metamorphosis, I began consciously attracting more down-to-earth, good people. My unconscious, reckless behavior had caused a lot of heartache to those I loved. And that lack of consciousness requires my deep apology. I am indebted to the community of North Kohala on the Big Island and to my friends on Oahu who have been my teachers. How very complex my life became in a parallel universe, living now in a tiny town in the north end of the Big Island, the Kohala Mountains. Just 1 month after moving to Hawaii and feeling completely disoriented, literally I found myself looking at a compass to know where north was. In our tiny town of Hawaii, I was introduced to a woman who will remain anonymous. Shockingly, I was told that I knew the father of her child. Oh my God. Am I in Peyton Place? My life is an open book generally, but what am I hearing? When I met her young son, it was absolutely true. His features gave his identity away magnanimously. My own secret was to be revealed in only 2 more months, when the truth of who my bio daddy was revealed. I surged with empathy for this parallel predicament, which exacerbated my throbbing heart and delicate balance to retain a stable and healthy state of being. Of course, my anchor was by my side, Jared, always there, helping to clear the way for a safe environment for me to seek a greater understanding of my life's experience. Ultimately, after many years, this young lad had resolution with his father, unlike my own resistance to cooperation. Well, I got a call from Lenny's sister telling me that my dad wants to see you, she said. He's going to visit the Big Island. Can you show him around? Of course, I wanted to have time with my former father-in-law because during my first marriage, he was very aloof. Lenny and his dad were very connected, but they weren't that close. And so there wasn't a whole lot of socializing. In fact, when I had my third child, Grandpa Cy made an appointment to come to the house to see her, and he drove up in his little icy blue Mercedes sports car, left the engine running, ran up the path, came in the house for 10 minutes, and saw his little new granddaughter. All the while, the car motor was still idling. Cy checked into the Monolani Resort on the Kohala coast, about a half an hour from where I was living with Jared. We met him the first day he arrived at his hotel, and I began explaining my situation with Maury. I remember when Cy and his wife Jeanette gave a formal prenuptial dinner to meet my parents. Cy had an adverse reaction to both Maury and Ruth and never really socialized with them again. So the news about Maury not being my father was jaw-dropping for Cy. His favorite vodka cocktail increased to 2 or 3 during my storytelling. Here I sat with my former father-in-law and my current fiancé. What a scene. Strangely enough, my story brought us closer together. I always remembered one of the very first things that Cy told me. Always try to be prepared. Those wise words have stayed with me all this time. Before we parted that day, Cy asked me to join him on his search for a place to live on the Big Island. I met up with him the following day. At the first real estate office we entered, I introduced him as my former father-in-law. And he said to the agent, "Excuse me," and he took me aside and emphatically told me, "You'll always be my daughter-in-law. I am your father-in-law." We spent a week together that was so fulfilling. I really think that I got to know him better. I realized that the relationship he had with family, especially his mother, paralleled my own. There was so much obligation and excessive responsibility on his shoulders like there was on mine. At a local cafe, seated at a table with only a few feet away from some local musicians playing Hawaiian music, Cy sat there and looked up and suddenly showed me the boy in him, just as my dad had showed me the boy frozen inside of him. We all have our child within us. And Cy gave me a glimpse of who he really was, a young violin virtuoso with great business acumen. Before Cy left the island, he told me, "I came here your father-in-law, and I'm leaving as your friend." He's gone now. He lived to be out Vicky. She was one of the first people I met in Kohala when I started a Pilates class at my house. A mutual friend introduced us, and Vicky loved dancing, but in her early 20s discovered that she had symptoms of MS. The man she married went into the healing arts and learned acupuncture and Chinese medicine, assisting his wife with her ailments. Along with her love of dance, now compromised by her physical condition, she was equally impassioned by literature. Finding a Pilates instructor on the Big Island was no easy feat in 1995. I called a ballet studio in Kona and spoke with the owner, Virginia, and introduced the idea of Pilates. She said that she was studying with a master on Maui and was building up to being certified. Virginia then posed the possibility of teaching me the rudiments of Pilates. I agreed to start a class at my house. My living room had space for 3 workout stations, but word got out in town, and I started getting calls from people asking to join us. I proposed to Vicky and our mutual friend Gail we move the class somewhere else, which ultimately ended up in Vicky's ballroom. For the 7 years that I lived on the Big Island initially, I attended class at Vicky's house. In addition to Pilates, a class of ballet was also taught, and so I participated in that as well. Therefore, Vicky, in essence, represented a very romantic notion in my life that was missing, gracefully moving to the music. But our relationship would deepen as time went on. After many years of her marriage ending in divorce, I began to know the true Vicky, whom I love and cherish.
Well, it's a new chapter, and interesting, Donna, that you speak about the feelings and thoughts that this new place could evoke, but also how someone from the past came into your life again. And in some ways, I think a new relationship with that person was formed. This idea of people from the past coming back for a reason and in some ways resolving things as well.
Yeah, it's quite a mystery to me, Adam, why you're led to go somewhere and who you're meant to meet. And, my song Love It Away was evoked from so many experiences I had in Hawaii. And the feeling I had there was that, whatever difficulties or very negative feelings that you have, that really, when it comes right down to it, love is the answer. And so I think titling this chapter Love It Away was quite appropriate. I was so surprised to get a call from my sister-in-law. I met her when I was 20 years old, and I remember, oh my gosh, I have to explain. I recall that at the time she was living in the San Fernando Valley, and she was a young mother who had 2 children at the time, about to have her 3rd, I believe. And it was a hot sunny day, and for some reason I was wearing a bikini when Lenny decided to go visit his sister and introduce me. So when she opened the door, there I stood in a, it's like talking about nothing to hide,
Well,
And
exactly. Yeah.
and we bonded. She was the type of person, she is the type of person who stayed extremely open. And she's kind of a prototype for the type of person that will bring people together under adverse conditions. So, so many years later, let's see, I was married in 68. I met her in 67. And here we are in probably 1996. So all these years later, she calls me to say that her dad has an interest in living on the Big Island and that he wanted to connect with me. So then, this was after I had learned the truth about Maury. And I knew how Cy reacted to my parents when they first met. Oh dear, it's a very vivid recall. When somebody kind of shivers a little bit because they're just not comfortable. But they're trying to be polite and cordial and keep the vision of why you're together. Why you're together. Meeting your future daughter-in-law's parents. So it was just quite revealing that my former father-in-law had some harmony, synchronicity. What do you call that? This feeling of being able to relate that I never really had the experience when I was married to his son.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost
And
almost like a change in roles. And I guess you also grew up. I mean, you were so young when you barely an adult when you first met him, and time goes on, and as part of becoming, I guess, your own person as well. I think you can relate to people in a different relationship or role.
well, and it was tragic because, here I meet him,
Mm,
I meet he and his beloved,
mm,
and then she passes away suddenly.
mm, mm.
I mean, just like 2 months after I'm married.
Yeah.
And then I think we talked about this in many chapters ago, that he kind of took off and had to find his North Star, and become more grounded again after such a shock to his system of losing his wife of many, many
Mm,
years.
mm,
And but it was quite a lovely experience, and very heartwarming, to know that he he treated me as an individual. I treated him as an individual. He
mm,
was no longer, even though he was kind of labeling me,
mm.
and telling me in a very sweet way that I'll always be his daughter-in-law, not his former daughter-in-law. It was a different kind of connection where no labels came attached. How weird is it, when when your first husband's father shows up in your home with your second husband? Of course, we weren't married yet, but still, in a different relationship. And that's how his daughter, that's how my sister-in-law is,
Mm, mm,
just cutting through the barrier of any kind of uncomfortableness that would come in those situations. So, and his love of Hawaii, was really just quite astounding. And
mm.
even though he desired to move to the Big Island and I could be his tour guide, he ultimately stayed in Los Angeles, where he was more familiar and could get around and be cared for in his later years. He was
Mm,
already in his early 80s at the time.
mm. And it's interesting, I think, when you talk about that idea of, I think it's just the complexity of people. If you allow yourself to be open with them and them to be open with you, that you see these layers that we've spoken about before, where all the combination of our experiences of the children we were, the children in some ways that we still are, and the complexity of life at his later stage of life, of all those things coming together, but seeing that person and seeing them in all their complexity, I think it's something very special.
Yeah, I mean, we put so many um, e- expectations on relationships. That's, more and more of what I'm discovering.
Mm.
And to think of the philosopher that said, expectations equals disappointments, and it's quite true. So, kind of a very deep understanding from that overall topic
Mm.
is that, when it comes to relationships, being a mother, I realize that, we all have to get here somehow, and a mother is a conduit, and there's no guarantee about having a certain kind of relationship
Mm.
with the being that comes through you, and then the acceptance of who they are, to allow them to be who they are. Because that's my priority, is, whatever the cooperation that you do need to find that peace of mind and that joy in your heart, the joy of life.
Mm.
you know and I think that's kind of what kind of triggered, this added connection with this exceptional person, who was such a creative spirit,
Mm.
and and quite a character, And then he was so accepting of my future,
Mm,
my
mm.
future husband. So
That it all seemed to fit, and how nice that we can remember someone like that, and close that chapter. I think as we're moving through the book, we meet these people at all sorts of periods. In this case, we met Si many years ago in the reading, in terms of the timeline, not that we've been doing this for many years, although we kind of have, and to kind of see where he went, and to say goodbye. I think that's very nice to do.
yes, and then as we began the chapter, you know, how completely ironic, meeting a young lad who, at the time, I did not know who my biological father was. But that the years that I spent on the Big Island in the beginning, those 7 years, and this young man and I would cross paths, and we really didn't have a lot of conversation. But again, there's a heart connection from who knows where. It could be, in my way, a past life. It could be, who knows? I mean, whatever the connection is, there's a magnetic attraction. And it's almost like looking in the mirror when I think about the empathy that I had for this young man, who wanted to know who his father, who wanted to know his father. And then just by chance, his evolution was that he could resolve. And that also helps me. It all helps me as a learning experience to know, sometimes when I see, maybe you can relate to this, Adam. When I see a loving child with their parent, especially a young girl with their father, I see that as an experience that could have been possible in my life. But as an observer, I don't feel envy. I don't feel jealousy. I'm happy for them. Somehow it creates a little bit of a stronger foundation or a building block in my life to know that exists. And yeah, so can you relate to that?
I think it raises that point that we've perhaps touched on before, that even if the relationships in one's own life were perhaps not the ones that you would have hoped for, to see, as you said, the joy that can come from some of those, I think does educate you, and perhaps also opens you up to other relationships in your life as well. That essence of that acceptance, or whatever we're seeing, if that perhaps didn't come from certain relationships in one's life, you can be a lot more mindful to go into other relationships with that, whether it's, as you said, a truthful relationship, whether it's an accepting relationship, whatever it may have been lacking from those. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in a neighborhood that's very, packed with playgrounds and children, so you do see a lot of that, and that's very, sometimes you see those sort of what do we call it? We joke a little bit, the put upon dads, they're trying to wrestle the pram and the bag and the this
Mr.
and that.
Mom.
Exactly. but you do see that connection there. And I guess to sort of round off that story, that idea of someone who did get a chance to know their biological father, but to sort of address this for the listener, were you ever compelled to seek out this person shortly after you got this information?
You're talking about my biological father?
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's a very bittersweet story, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can. I still have a manila envelope filled with a letter of introduction, a picture of myself and my 3 children, sent to an address that was given to me by my mother, who said that this man that she was in love with, and was the father, my biological father. This was the address, and so I packed it up, and 1 month later, it came back to me, and it said "Return to sender." And so that was my personal experience, that again, referring to the name of our podcast, Love's a Secret Weapon, the secret that was held in my very extended family was a bond that is still held by way too many.
And over time as well, coming to terms with that relationship, if there wasn't a actual relationship to come in later life, to be able to integrate that relationship at a different level.
Oh, well, you know me. There are times when I sit at the piano and a song comes to me, and I am a very true believer in angels, and like in a dream state when someone appears, and it's like a visit, that there are times that certain loved ones in my life, the ones that are gone, the ones and he that I never met, appear in spirit, and I have no problem with that. Doesn't freak me out or anything. In fact, it puts a smile on my face that I can kind of surpass the boundaries of the physical, and feel their love, and it comes through music.
It's interesting. I was reading an article the other day. I think it was published a couple of years back, or probably last year, in the Atlantic, and it won the Pulitzer Prize for writing. And it was about the author was Jennifer Senior. So if anyone wants to seek it out, please do. And it was about a young man who died in 9/11. And this journalist, this writer, speaking to his family, who she also knew, and she knew the young man, Bobby. And I won't say too much about it because I think it's well worth reading. But one of his quotes from one of his journals, and there was some discussion of exactly the nature of the quote, but one of the quotes that was really impactful for his family from coming across these journals and these writings that this young man had left behind was, "Life loves on." And I think that's kind of a pretty perfect description in some ways of what we're talking about today.
And there are so many cultures that ritualize their loved ones, and have shrines, and and different days of the year, or maybe even on a daily basis, that they hold them, they revere them in such a high esteem that that even though their bodies aren't there, that their soul, their spirit is very prominent in their life. And as a matter of fact, this has nothing to do with politics, okay? But I happen to hear, for all of our listeners, please, keep an open mind, but I happen to hear our current president mention that his late son, Beau, is very close in spirit to him. And whenever he makes a decision, he always asks himself, what would Beau do? Like you're saying, that love never goes away.
Yeah, whatever lives on, whether you believe in, say, a soul, in which case that lives on. If you don't believe in that, then the memories that people have made and the lessons that people have taught us do live on, and that's how that person lives on. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I tell you, let me introduce our next guest, who is a young man filled with life, filled with love, Kyle, who, so incredible that he loves mid-century rock and roll. He has a huge record collection, and a family who appreciates his complete romantic involvement with with mid-century modern, and he looks the part and he acts the part, and we'll go on to our conversation with Kyle.
Welcome back to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast. And again, this season we're inviting special fan guests to speak with Donna and I about their lives, about their interests, about whatever comes up in our conversation. And so with that in mind, we're really pleased to welcome our guest for today's episode, Kyle Jasper. How are you today, Kyle?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing well. How are we, Donna?
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy that we finally connected, dear. And will you please tell us how old you are?
I'm 18 years old.
See, everyone, now this young man loves the 60s music and everything 60s. Is that true?
That is very true, yes.
So tell me, how deep do you go?
Well, certainly the music's probably the biggest fascination I have, because I've been into old music since, I was little. I mean, my dad raised me on Johnny Cash, and I just got into one singer after the other, and here we are now. But then I also love, 60s fashion and the mid-century furniture and all that. Just the whole time period's just fascinating.
And do you have a car?
Oh, not yet, but hopefully soon. I do want, probably a Nova or Chevelle or something like that. Definitely a Chevy.
Okay, and do you have a tone or color, or do you have a vintage color picked out?
Oh, definitely like a turquoise color, for sure. Just very beachy.
You are very Malibu.
Yep.
That is pretty perfect, I think. And where are you from, Kyle? Or where do you live at the moment?
I'm from Westminster, Maryland, and I've grown up here my whole life.
So East Coast, and is that kind of a trend for your the group that you hang out with? Is that something that they love to do as well, like mid-century lifestyle?
It's kind of funny. I'm not very much one to be trendy. And all of my friends have a lot of different interests, and I'm the only one with those kinds. But they think it's cool. It's just not what they're accustomed to per se.
So they'll learn a few things from you.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Donna, I think there's a lot of us who probably grew up outside of the 60s, but who gravitated towards that and didn't necessarily, our friends don't necessarily share a lot of those interests, but as, like Kyle said, are just very supportive, and just the diversity of those friendships is really great. I think most of my friends are not into that stuff, but they certainly appreciate coming over to my house and going, what objet have I bought this week that I probably shouldn't have?
Why are you wearing that Aloha shirt, right?
Because I can fit into it. That's why.
That's a perfect reason. So have you just graduated?
Yeah, I graduated last year.
Fantastic. And what are you interested in pursuing?
Probably something in the music industry, whether that's making music or producing or A&R, stuff like that. Just, I want to be involved. I live and breathe music.
Is there a local studio that you could maybe apprentice at, or?
Maybe in Baltimore. I'm still kind of looking around, but I haven't really gotten any hits yet. I need a car first if I'm going to get there, obviously.
Okay. But you could experiment
little by little.
probably if you had equipment at home, and just kind of put it out there on the internet, or start your own YouTube channel and just put some music out there, almost like a portfolio to show wherever you go.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm saving up for a better mic. My best friend, he's very supportive, and he wants me to do what I want to do, and he's you got to do something with what you're doing. I'm I guess so. We're figuring it out.
That's so great. Well, with the technology that we have, I mean, that's how Justin Bieber started. And I don't know, people are getting to be sensations on TikTok, just you don't have to do it any particular way anymore, so there's a lot of flexibility. Yeah, that's really incredible. And so do you collect vinyl?
Yeah, I do. I have I don't even know at this point, probably close to 300, if not more, albums and singles.
Oh goodness! Wow, fantastic. Any particular, say, collectibles, or is it just what you like, or are there particular ones that are worth a lot, or?
I mean, I have kind of a mixture of all kinds of that stuff. I have a promotional copy of Leslie Gore's album All About Love from '66. It's got like the gold label. Then I just ordered a promotional copy of her Love Me by Name album, so that's gonna be coming in like a week or so. So I'm excited.
What attracts you so much to her?
Oh wow. First of all, just her voice. I mean, my God, she was phenomenal. And I also think just how she, even when she wasn't really choosing when she was recording, like when it was more like, you know, the cry songs and all that, she kind of, the way she sang it, she like rewebbed it to kind of still sound independent and strong and, you know, her, and not as much what people expected of her.
And just to go back a step, Kyle, because I know Donna and yourself have been speaking probably on Instagram actually, but your sort of music, are you a musician, are you a vocalist, or are you more interested in production side?
I've played drums since I was 4, and I do enjoy singing.
Fantastic.
But yeah, drumming is what I'm very experienced with more than anything.
Fantastic.
So you have a band?
I haven't been in a band, but in high school I was like in jazz band, and I did stuff, you know, playing compositions and stuff like that. They were all instrumental pieces, but they were still a lot of fun.
Well, are there clubs that in your town that or nearby that you've snuck out and gone to see different musicians?
I wish. I mean, the only thing I can really say about Westminster is we have more cows than people, but it's a nice place. But we don't have like any real clubs or anything. I mean, we have a pub that has like sometimes live entertainment, but I haven't snuck out to go anywhere because I lived like 15 minutes out of town growing up. So
it doesn't make it.
It'd be quite a hike,
especially without that mid-century car that you're hoping to get down the track. So are you Kyle? Are you a fan of particular drummers? Like I don't know. I'm thinking of Karen Carpenter or Mickey Dolenz, or
I was gonna say Karen Carpenter. Yeah, I love Karen. She was phenomenal. Buddy Rich was an interesting character, but he was good. That's an undeniable truth. Ringo Starr, obviously. Yeah, just, you know, a lot of these people. Oh, Hal Blaine. How could I forget Hal Blaine?
Yes.
He was good.
Of course, and Donna's got a very long history with Hal Blaine.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
You can definitely identify him. And but I remember starting just before Hal Blaine, I worked with a guy named Earl Palmer. Yeah, he was a really good early rock and roll drummer, like in the, I don't know, probably started maybe even in the 40s in pop music. And then I don't know if you know that my son is a drummer.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah, fantastic drummer.
And so I, you know, there is one in the family, and actually my half brother is also a drummer, but my son started very early as well. And the reason I say, did you sneak out? Because, you know, my son he had a friend I didn't know was old enough to drive. And since he was 12 years old, you know, he had transportation to go quite a distance to clubs. And he went to the Baked Potato, in Burbank, and listened to jazz, and from 12 to maybe 14, and then really started studying a guy. Well, at the studios, he got to go to in Hollywood, which, you know, that makes a big difference in your location. If you're like, are you going to be going to a university, or how are you going to plan your future?
I'm planning to go to Towson University. It's near Baltimore.
I see. So you'll be closer to the city, and then you'll have more exposure.
Yeah, and it's a big college too, so there's probably going to be a lot of musical programs and people in general who probably want to start bands and stuff like that. So I think it might open a few doors.
Fantastic. And what are you going to study there, Kyle?
I'm probably going to do communications with like a minor in some kind of music thing, just because with communications, you know, music's a very competitive business and everybody naturally should have a fallback. So I figure by having communications, I can apply it to any like non-STEM field. You know what I mean? I think it's a very safe degree that can assure me some sort of career no matter what happens.
Yeah, I think
Very
that's
practical.
It's very practical. I studied psychology in university, but I had a sort of sub major in communications, and I loved it. It was, TV, it was film, it was radio, it was all those sorts of things. And as you said, a nice way to have a diverse set of skills, but still within the area that you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wanted to know more about your, the drums that. When you were 4 years old, did your parents buy you a set, or how did you get started?
So basically, it's a funny story, actually. So when I was born, I actually walked very early at 9 months, which I guess is very early. That's just what they said. So I didn't play with my hands as much. So I had a graphomotor kind of issue. I mean, it's still a little bit around, but not bad. So my parents were like, let's find a way besides the regular occupational therapy. How are we going to get him to use his hands more? So they enlisted me in a little bit of these drum lessons up at a little place in town called Coffee Music, which I think just closed. So I started there. It was just at the place with a little snare drum, learning how to do, the quarter notes, then the half notes and all of that jazz. And then eventually when I was around maybe 6 or 7, we got myself a drum set, and I started having a drum teacher come over, and he'd teach me how to do stuff, but he would also have me play just along to the music that I like. So I would be playing along to Patsy Cline and the Beatles and all kinds of very different styles of music with my drums, and I just kind of learned how to do things with that. Yeah, they were my early favorites.
You and I parallel.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll tell you a little tidbit. There was a show, Adam, help me out here. Mad About You is called
Mad About You.
And it was starring Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt. And I don't know if you ever saw it, but anyway, they were a couple, and he was going to propose to her in one of the episodes. They were going to be at a roller skating rink, and the music in the background was supposed to be Crazy by Patsy Cline. Well, I knew the music.
Really?
Yeah, I knew the musical director, and the show wouldn't give him the budget to use the original. So he asked me if we could reproduce that record for that particular scene. And so if you ever dig out that particular episode from Mad About You, you'll be hearing me singing as though I was Patsy Cline at the roller skating rink when he's proposing to his young to-be wife. So
That's amazing. That's really cool.
Have you seen that show, Kyle?
No, I haven't, but I've heard about it, so I'll definitely watch it tonight. I have some homework for sure.
Okay. And so do you still have your original drum set?
No, we sold it because it was a junior drum set. So I'll just buy one while I'm in college, probably.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, think about this. I mean, when my son was was on tour and he was in Australia, I arranged for Adam and a friend to go see the concert. And when I think about that, it's like, wait a minute. If you choose the drums, you have to have a roadie, or at least one. I know my son has a set of 12 drums, and that doesn't include cymbals and, everything else, and even electronics. And, traveling all over the world with a drum set, think about it. If that's what you end up doing. I mean, I know locally, you'll be, maybe you should get a station wagon or something.
I definitely want a hatchback at least.
Yeah, you'll be loading up your drums to take it wherever you need to go.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd never thought about that. How do you get your drum set onto the plane? You always see the guitarists get their guitar if they've put it through the checked luggage, but I've never seen a whole drum set come through. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and you can
I don't think I have either.
You can imagine all the huge speakers, and if let's say Roger wants a Steinway, that has to fit on the belly of the plane as well. So
yeah. I think someone like a Roger Waters, because that was for the Pink Floyd show where Joey came and was on that tour. I think whatever Roger Waters wants, he will probably be able to get.
Yes. And they just played, just for your information, Kyle, my son started playing drums for Beck
Really?
And that was, oh my gosh, now we're going back to like 1986, 7, things like that.
Hmm.
And then he became REM's drummer. Do you know REM?
REM? Yeah, I love REM.
Yeah, yeah. And then he's toured with so many different people. And currently he's touring with Roger Waters from Pink Floyd.
Wow, that's
And I don't,
crazy. That's
you know
really
what?
cool.
On the East Coast, they played Madison Square Garden for 2 nights, and because it's quite a
Yeah,
show. And just go on YouTube, and you'll probably get a glimpse of the concerts. They've been on tour for a couple of months already.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna look it up for
Yeah.
sure. That'd be great.
Everything's opening back up. Like it's, especially for musicians over the last couple of years where everything just closed down and they had to figure out, do I just pack up for a while? Do I go on YouTube or Zoom? What do I do? And I know the pandemic is certainly not over, but it's nice to be able to have live music again.
Oh,
Oh, I'd
indeed.
say. But I would say one bright side of it, though, is that a lot of people recorded a lot of great songs over quarantine that I don't think we would have had we not been shut down.
Good. I agree with you. And it was a kind of a subversively, creative period. We were just talking about that. I call the virus the corona goddess, and I kind of speak about her in terms of an energy that has definitely caused a tremendous amount of chaos. But when she said, "Stop the world, I want to get off," and everybody has to stop now and pay attention, what a powerful force. And yes,
Mhm.
it brought out a lot of creativity in so many people. Did you, were you inspired, during that period of time, or we're still going through it, but specifically when you were in lockdown?
A little bit, because, like, being in quarantine, you're withdrawn from society and you're by yourself and you start thinking inward a lot. And I mean, I saw that with last year when Billie Eilish released her album Happier Than Ever, which was all about like self-reflection and looking inward. And I think that's what a lot of people were doing, and I think that's why it's one of probably this decade's one of its classics now, because it's just so what's the word, like, thought out and very intricate, and it's just very like intuitive, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because she, rather than her feeling restricted by the isolation, she, as you said, went in and expanded in that way. Because literally, when you think about living externally, I always kind of say you hit a wall. I mean, there's just so far you can go. But when you go in, it's infinite. There is no end, and you can go as deep as you possibly can, which touches your soul, and that's the essence of your creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you always kind of move your hands? I mean, now that you explained, that you were an early walker and your parents were trying to stimulate your use of your hands, do your hands stay still, or are you always kind of like drumming, even at the dinner table, like with your
Yes.
hands
Always drumming. Always.
That is great. That is great.
That's
Honest
funny you
to God,
brought that up.
no, well, you can parallel, because I know my son is the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
Once you start, you never go back.
that is in your blood. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think so too.
So tell me a Billie Eilish song of how you brought her up.
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. Gotta think I would say probably the opening track to her Happier Than Ever album. It's called Getting Older.
Oh,
And it's partially about being famous, but it's about growing up and like realizing things about yourself that you hadn't noticed before.
Yeah, that thank you very much. I do admire her, and it's interesting that you have this amazing musical diversity, going all the way back to Patsy Cline, and now you're talking about Billie Eilish, who is so innovative. She and her brother working out of their bedroom and having their home as their kind of creative laboratory, which is very inspiring for, a whole new concept for a whole new generation and generations to come, to be less conformist and more individual, but not in a way of separating yourself out, but to individuate in a way where you relate to others and they, in turn can relate to you. And that's remarkable. So
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And then, your life has been, do you have siblings? I mean,
I have a younger brother. He's 14.
And is there any similarity in interests?
We're very different people, I will say. I mean, he's also an old soul, but in different ways. So I collect records and old furniture, and he collects old furniture too, but like different. Like he has like an old radio from like the 20s. Like that's like one that looks like a cabinet. And then he's got like a RCA Victor TV record player radio set thing that's like all in that big. And he's big into Star Wars lately. Like huge. Like he's got like a huge collection of Star Wars. So that's kind of how my brother is.
Again,
so complement each other.
Yeah.
I have to...
We're very different, but it keeps things interesting. It really does.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in an antique store the other week and I saw these beautiful old radios, not the whole cabinet, but just these beautiful radios sitting on the shelf. And wouldn't you know that this antique store is lovely, but I think they keep the best stuff for them, because you notice if there's not a price tag on it, that means they're not selling it. And of course, everything I wanted that day, the beautiful pink radio, the lamp, whatever else was there, like, no, you can't have that. I'm like, okay, right.
I didn't know that they did that, because like every time I've been to a store and like there hasn't been like a price tag on it, I've usually been able to like go, like this is only like with records, but like it doesn't have a tag, and I'll be like, hey, how much would you want to sell this for? And he'd be like, I don't know, you name a price, and I'll be like $10, and he's like, deal. Like it's always been $10. Like it's so easy.
Maybe I need you, like, because I couldn't do it.
I don't know if I'm just lucky or what.
Well, you're definitely choosing a direction in life to study communication with that innate skill.
Yeah, I just love people. I mean, I always am communicating with people. Like I'm talking to people every day. I can't not talk to people, if that makes sense.
I think that's great.
So lovely. It is really wonderful. And wait a minute. So are you, let's see, I'm feeling a little ignorant at this point, but are you eligible to vote?
Yeah.
So are you into, what's going on this crazy planet of ours?
Somewhat, but not to the extent that it's like revolving around me. I believe in common decency and treating everybody fairly. I just kind of like, I don't try to subscribe to any like set in place like party system, or like I don't really watch the news because everything's so what's the word favored or biased. The word, everything's so biased to one side or the other. So I just kind of see what's going on around me in my environment. I make my own opinions, and I just believe in what I think is right with my own personal value system, and I go off of that.
And so you're having a conversation with your friends or your family. Does it go into that territory? My best friend hates politics. Like he will avoid it at all costs. Like I'll try bringing up some with him occasionally. He'll be like, I don't know, man. He'll be like, nah, man. I don't do politics, man. I'll be like, okay. So what would be a topic that, is compatible?
I mean, the whole like, abortion issues and all the gay rights stuff. I'm like, why are we even like still talking about this? I thought we were past debating it, but I guess not.
Yeah, there's always a risk, isn't there? There's that kind of, we think that's solved, or that's resolved, shall we say, and we've moved and we're more enlightened as a society, but we do have this tendency to slip back into I know Donna and I have spoken about this a lot before, I guess that old energy, I guess is maybe what, Donna, you'd refer to it as, that we sometimes have to be careful and on guard that we don't slip back into a lot of that.
Well, the past.
Mm.
That's, you know, that's the interesting part about what is going on for me, and it has nothing to do with politics. It's the energy of what is happening on this planet, and that is, it's becoming totally obvious that the past last 5 to 6,000 years, you know, of patriarchal dominance, etc., and so much discrimination and the idea of superiority really has never really worked. You know, in our true nature is peace and harmony, and you know, that's one of my favorite songs. You know, I love that. You know, we can achieve peace and harmony, and music is like the best avenue and tool to do that, you know, bypassing whatever differences you have. As a matter of fact, there is a documentary that we haven't spoken about. It's about Muscle Shoals.
I've heard of that place.
Yeah, I think it's in Alabama.
Yeah, isn't that where Dusty Springfield made Dusty Memphis? Or
That's
she was
right.
supposed to.
That's right.
She was supposed to, and then she did in New York because of her too scared to be in Aretha's studio.
Yes.
Well, you know, that's too bad because, you know, the Rolling Stones went down there, but that's where Aretha Franklin, you know, really came into her own. And but what I wanted, the point I wanted to make is when the Stones arrived in Muscle Shoals, and the fellow, oh gosh, it's not coming to my brain, who ran the Muscle Shoals studio, he had a special group of musicians that came from that area, and they all thought that the river that flowed by the cotton fields right out front of where that studio was the river that sang to them and made the music. So when, you know, the Stones arrive, and they thought that they were going to step into an all black musician studio, and they were shocked to see everybody was white. And that's what's so incredible about making music is there really is, you know, we're blind to that, and it's just a peaceful and harmonious way to live. So I'm hoping that the music that you do make in the future, or however, you know, you participate in music, well, that's the only way I see you functioning. So I look forward to hearing from Kyle Jasper in whatever capacity you decide, you know, is harmonious for you.
Thank you. I can't wait to do whatever comes my way.
How exciting. It's just really exciting to think of what you'll decide to do, whatever that is. And that, as you were talking about, Kyle, that self-reflection, and we're all about self-reflection here to kind of, you know, clarify, as I think we've spoken about, what your values are and what your passions are and what meaning you want to derive from life at any age or any period of life. But I know, you know, we've asked you a lot of questions, and I know you have questions for Donna. So we're happy to give you the stage or the microphone or whatever we're doing, and let you ask some of your burning questions.
Okay. Well, yes, my first question for you, Donna, is when you were a teenager and you were starting out in the music industry, like with, you know, Dr. Pepper, working on Shindig, who did you like look up to as role models, like other singers that have been there, it's been in the same game and been in the industry, who you could kind of identify with and kind of draw certain lessons from? Well,
I used to sing along with 2 albums. One was Edie Gourmet, who was a pop singer with a fabulous range.
Bubbles, bangles, here are they, jingling, bubbles, bangles, bright shiny beads, sparkles, spangles, my heart will sing, sing-a-ling-a, wearing baubles, bangles, and beads. I'll glitter and gleam so.
And another one was a lady named Pat Suzuki. And, and I would literally vocalize with them, just listening to their records when I was, I don't know, probably 11 to 14, something like that. And then when I got signed to Dr. Pepper, I was flown to New York to film a calendar, and the last scene of the calendar for December was dressed like a prom. And at the end of that photo shoot, there was an executive of Dr. Pepper there. And he said, don't change, just stay as you are. I was in a long white gown. My hair was up and I had a little fur wrap. And he said, we have special tickets for you. So I was with my adopted father as a chaperone and my manager and photographer. And the three of us, left this photographer's studio, went to theater. And lo and behold, I was given front row seats to Funny Girl to see Barbra Streisand.
No way.
Yeah. And I didn't know exactly how old I was 16 at the time. I think she must have been maybe 21.
Yeah, probably a few years older. Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my God, I saw her not just sing from her abdomen and her diaphragm and and her heart, but literally the way she was standing and the way she extended her fingers and all the way out to the tips of her nails, I could see how she completely projected out to the audience, and of course everyone was just captivated. And so I would say Barbra Streisand is my all-time number one.
That's amazing.
Pretty.
That must have been really cool.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's pretty cool to think of. And that would have probably been, I think we looked it up, that was when that show was just starting. So that would have been in the first couple of months or first few months of that.
Yeah,
so,
when she was just discovered. But I had seen her at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles when she would go to secondhand stores and buy men's suits and wear the men's vest and take the seam out of the inseam of the trouser and turn it into a long straight skirt. And then her prop on the stage was a stool. And it was the funniest thing because she's singing all these gorgeous ballads and whatever and show tunes, and she's slipping off the stool because her skirt was so tight and she forgot to make a slit big enough to stretch her legs out. She is a natural comedian. You just don't plan those. You know what I mean? That body language is just so funny. But, again, yeah, Barbra Streisand. And then whenever I could see her perform, I would. And yeah, and one time I even got to see her. I don't know if I told you this, Adam, but one time I was in Brentwood. And it was a hot summer day, and I took my young daughter to go get some Haagen-Dazs ice cream in the local neighborhood, and there's Barbra Streisand in her short shorts. I think that was her Star is Born era because her hair was all permanented. And as she's going for the chocolate, and I'm just helping my daughter. We had this eye contact, which was kind of nice, and that's the closest I've ever been to her.
Yeah, we've spoken about Edie Gourmet before. I didn't know the Pat Suzuki record was an influence. Who she was in? What was she in? Flower Drum Song, I think it was.
She was?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
That was Nancy Kwan.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Nancy Kwan did the movie version. I think had done the Broadway show. So I think.
Oh, really?
her kind of recording of a lot of those songs, I think, is quite iconic. But I don't know too much about her.
And and Adam, while we're talking about our all-time favorites, tell me about yours.
Oh, goodness. Let's see. So, growing up, I think it would have had to, I've probably mentioned this before, growing up, it probably would have had to be Bette Midler, because I think just particularly what she did. I mean, I like the ballads, but maybe not so much the ballads, probably more the 1970s, kind of stuff. And I think what you were talking about, Donna, this idea of someone speaking to you, you feel there's that emotion that was just coming out of her, and that understanding of something else. And I think that's why I gravitated towards her, because all good music can help you to understand better what you're experiencing or what you're feeling. And for me, I think it was a lot of the stuff that she did in those early albums. So for me, yeah, I think it was probably Bette Midler was very influential early on.
Eloquently said. Beautiful.
And and Kyle, please, I think you have other questions, so please go ahead.
So my other question is, when you were on Shindig, you got to perform in the presence of a lot of other like really big and famous singers, like Leslie Gore, the Mamas and the Papas, Glenn Campbell. Do you have any like cool stories of anybody you've met while on that show that like stuck out to you?
Wow.
Go back through the Rolodex.
Well, one of my favorite memories was seeing Jerry Lee Lewis and wait a minute.
Who are we thinking of?
And Jackie Wilson. And because there again, there was no segregation on that show, which was quite controversial. And the producer, coordinated a kind of a medley so that Jerry Lee Lewis was at the piano while Jackie Wilson was standing on the piano. And, they were both in the frame of the camera. And, of course, Jerry Lee Lewis, I remember standing close enough to see his knuckles bleeding because, like doing his slides on the piano that he did and then kicking the stool back so he could just kind of, just totally be at one with the piano. And then Jackie Wilson doing his choreography and, of course, his incredible voice. So, that was a totally memorable experience. And then the special that we did called Shindig Place, that's when I met Leslie Gore, and Marvin Gaye and Tina Turner were the headliners on that particular, I think it was a dual episode, so that there's a little bit of a rock opera concept. Yeah, being that close to Marvin Gaye, which I was doing concerts with Marvin Gaye, but it was hard to get close to him in 17,000 people surrounding him or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, but he was such a gentle soul, and then contrary, Tina Turner, was this almost like a I want to say like a Grace Jones wild, kind of a pantherish type of woman that you knew had a really hard life and was just, excuse my language, but kicking ass, with her talent, finding the courage, to put up with whatever she was putting up with until she didn't do it anymore. And all that came through, not just in her voice, but in her body language. And then Leslie Gore was a bit conservative, I would say, on the set, because we were all kind of West Coast people, and she flew out from New York. And so, even though we're all doing it together, she kind of felt a little less integrated. But and she was also number one in the country on, so
everywhere.
It's my party, it was like, okay, I work with Quincy Jones, so and I remember she arrived in a long black limousine, just very New York.
Yeah.
That's a great image.
That sounds
fantastic.
That's crazy. That's so cool. Although I did hear she was also very shy, so she was probably kind of reserved.
Yeah, and I don't know so much about that period of her life. Maybe you know more, Kyle, but of course I know she came out later in life. So whether she also felt perhaps a disconnect between her true self and what she perhaps had to project for her music career, I don't know. But certainly, if you haven't seen that episode of Shindig, it would be on YouTube. I think it's she's with Bill Medley. You're probably with Bobby Hatfield, Donna, and Tina Turner's
Yes.
probably with Marvin Gaye. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
just looked it up. It was uploaded 9 days ago. I'll be watching that after this.
Yeah, and I should say what I shared with you, Dr. Adam, is that on YouTube, there has been a fellow that came forward who has a few shindigs that are in pristine condition that will be posted one by one. I think the first one is Goldfinger on YouTube. So that's kind of a refreshing, version other than seeing the kinescope version that isn't the original video. This is supposed to be pristine video image and sound.
That's pretty exciting.
So we'll see if the Shindig Place is one of them. I don't know if he has that. That would be phenomenal.
It'd be very cool to see Shindig Place in full, because it's fantastic, of course, to have the whatever we do have on YouTube, but seeing some of those, really pristine copies, you feel like you're there yesterday. Yes, it's in black and white, but it gives it an additional life to the energy that it already has. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I may have shared this with you, but one time I was in New York, and I met up with Paul Schaefer, who is a brilliant musician, obviously, and it was before David Letterman went off the air, and so he was still, directing the band for the Late Show, and he knew that I was on Shindig, and he also knew my son, by the way, as a musician. So he wanted to see one of these pristine copies, and it was of Shaken All Over. And that's what he asked for. But what I want to say is that here's Paul Schaefer dressed as Paul Schaefer is always, to the nines. And I'm not kidding. He was wearing the slickest suit I've ever seen. I don't know what kind of fabric it was, but I understand that Letterman kept his studio at a meat locker temperature. So you had to really dress warm to go on set with him. I still can't believe some of the women that showed up with bare shoulders. I don't know how they could do that without shivering.
Well, you had experience of, on the beach party movies. You weren't filming during summer. You make it work.
Here's Paul Schaefer, this very professional musician. And when he put in the, I guess it was a CD, or I'm not sure if it was
ROM or something.
Yeah. And he had this little black and white television, probably, Kyle, like your brother's. And probably like a little old Zenith, black and white. And he had this kind of mid-50s desk chair, nothing fancy, and he pulled it right up close, not more than 3 feet away from the screen, and the TV was on a shelf that was a little higher, and so it was as though he was a little boy looking up at a TV. And he said, before the music started, he said, I ran home every day to watch Shindig. I would run home from school when I was 8 years old to watch Shindig. And he kind of recreated that whole scenario. And then when he listened to it, he was amazed at the sound, because the sound that we experienced live on set was like no other. Everyone
loved the quality of the sound. There was no feedback. There was no distortion. It was just pure amplification. And, your voice sounded the way your voice wasn't changed a bit. And, of course, the musicians were all amazing, but most of the musicians had pre-recorded the music. So it was more about the performers doing their live performances to the pre-recorded music. And that was just to do a live show that, wouldn't have too much editing involved. And, we had live audiences, so that just helped it really keep the pace so quick. But Paul was amazed at the quality. So I hope that anyone that tunes into YouTube and sees the first one on Goldfinger sees the difference too, and hears the difference.
I can't wait.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, honey, it is just such a great pleasure and joy to be able to visit with you and get to know you, and wish you all the best for your future and for the world's future, especially with the avenue that you're choosing. So thank you, honey, for being on Love's a Secret Weapon.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I had such a great time. You are amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, honey.
Now, here is your Shindig host, Jimmy O'Neill. Hey, thank you so much, everybody. We're going to have fun tonight. Welcome to Shindig. Tonight, we've decided to utilize our talent, our spectacular cast, in a television first. The world's first rock and roll opera. So get ready. Here we go with Act One of Shindig Place.
Your love gives me such a thrill. Such a loving won't pay my bills. I need money. I want the money. That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want. Wait a minute. Let me tell you a little something about the money, honey. All right. Well, I'd be doggone if I wouldn't work all day. Baby, and I'd be doggone if I wouldn't bring you my pay. Baby, but if I ever caught you running around, throwing my money all over this town, then I wouldn't be doggone. Hey, I'd be long gone. I wouldn't be doggone, baby, I'd be long gone. I'd be long gone. I must be seeing things, oh no, it can't be true. I must be hearing things when I hear her say to him, I want you, I need you, I love you. Look at the way he looks at her, look at the way he smiles. I remember when he was mine. I remember when things were fine. Oh, look at the way he looks at her now. Isn't that the look of love? Well, look at the way he holds her hand. Look at the way they dance. I remember when he loved me. But look at the way he smiles now. Isn't that the look of love?
You never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your lips. And there's no tenderness like before in your fingertips. You're trying hard not to show it, but baby, I know it. You've lost that love in me.
Yes, love